Everyone knows the names of America's old money: the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the Astors. In Philadelphia, it was families like the Biddles and the Drexels who ruled society. They lived in mansions on Society Hill. They would not let anyone into their clubs who did not have the right last name. But while the white aristocracy was busy excluding everyone, another aristocracy was rising right under their noses: a black aristocracy. In the 1840s, decades before slavery ended in the South, a secret society of black families in Philadelphia was amassing fortunes that rivaled the white elite. They lived in mansions with English butlers. They sent their children to private schools in Paris. They owned the catering empires that fed the white upper class. They were called the Old Philadelphians of color, and for nearly 50 years they operated a parallel universe of wealth and privilege that history has almost completely erased. They had their own 400 list, their own debutante balls, their own rules. They were so exclusive that even other wealthy black people were often denied entry. This is the story of James Forten, Robert Purvis, and the dynasties that proved black wealth was not just possible in the 19th century. It was powerful, and it was dangerous. If you enjoy stories about the hidden side of American wealth, consider subscribing. We explore the fortunes that textbooks tried to forget. Let's begin with a sailmaker who became a king. It is 1798. Philadelphia is the capital of the United States. And a 32-year-old black man named James Forten is about to do something impossible. He is buying the sail loft where he used to work as an apprentice. Forten was not born enslaved. He was born free in Philadelphia. But freedom did not mean equality. Most black men in the city worked as day laborers or servants. Forten was different. He invented a device to handle heavy sails on ships, and it revolutionized the industry. Within 10 years, Forten was not just a business owner. He was one of the wealthiest men in Philadelphia, black or white. He employed 40 men, both black and white. His fortune was estimated at $100,000. In today's money, that is millions. But Forten did not just hoard cash. He built a dynasty. He bought a 3-story mansion on Lombard Street. He filled it with mahogany furniture and fine art. He hired private tutors for his daughters because he refused to send them to segregated schools. The Forten home became the center of a world that was not supposed to exist. A world where black people discussed philosophy, played classical music, and planned the abolition of slavery over 7-course dinners. European diplomats visited him. White abolitionists sought his funding. He was the patriarch of Philadelphia's black elite. But to understand how deep this society went, we have to look beyond just one man. We have to look at the industry they conquered. By 1830, a class system had solidified in black Philadelphia that mirrored the white aristocracy. They called themselves the representative colored citizens. At the top were families with old money, wealth generated before 1820. The leaders were a new kind of king, the caterer kings. This sounds like a service job today, but in the 19th century, black caterers were the moguls of the food industry. They were the celebrity chefs and event planners of their era. Men like Robert Bogle and Peter Augustin did not just serve food, they controlled the social calendar of white Philadelphia. If the Biddles or the Whartons wanted to throw a ball, they had to hire Bogle. He owned the china, the silver, and the linens. He controlled the staff. Peter Augustin came from Haiti and brought French culinary techniques that dazzled American society. He invested his profits into real estate, buying buildings in the heart of the city. These families created a monopoly. They did not just work for white wealth, they leveraged it. They took the money from white society parties and funneled it back into black institutions. They built the churches, they funded the schools, and they intermarried. A Forten married a Purvis. A Minton married a Bogle. They created a closed loop of wealth that protected them from the racism outside their doors. They were the invisible backbone of the city's economy. The financial power of this group was staggering. By 1837, the black community in Philadelphia held $250,000 in real estate. By 1847, that number had quadrupled. They organized their own census because the U.S. government refused to accurately count their wealth. They wanted proof. They formed literary societies like the Gilbert Lyceum, where talking about slavery was forbidden, not because they did not care, but because they wanted a space to discuss art, science, and literature without being defined by their oppression. They were constructing a reality where they were simply aristocrats. Robert Purvis, Fortin's son-in-law, took this lifestyle to its absolute peak. He was the son of a white cotton merchant and a free woman of color. He inherited a massive fortune. He looked white. He could have moved to Europe and lived as a white aristocrat. Instead, he stayed in Philadelphia and declared himself black. He built a country estate called Byberry. It had prize-winning livestock, rare gardens, and a library filled with first editions. It also had a secret trapdoor in the floor. While Purvis lived like a lord, he was also the president of the Underground Railroad. His mansion was a station for escaping slaves. This was the paradox of the black elite. They lived in luxury that rivaled the white upper class, but their lives were constantly in danger because of the color of their skin. In 1838, that danger arrived at their front door. May 17, 1838, Philadelphia. The city is tense. Abolitionists have just built Pennsylvania Hall, a grand building dedicated to free speech and ending slavery. James Fortin helped fund it. The black elite saw it as their symbol of progress, but the white working class saw it as a threat. A mob of thousands gathered outside. They were not just angry about slavery. They were angry about black wealth. They saw black men like Fortin and Purvis walking the streets in silk suits, while white immigrants struggled to find work. The resentment boiled over. The mob burned Pennsylvania Hall to the ground only 3 days after it opened. Then they turned toward the black neighborhoods. They did not go after the poor. They went after the rich. They targeted the mansions. They targeted the businesses. Robert Purvis sat in his estate at Byberry, watching the glow of the fires in the distance, armed with a shotgun, waiting for the mob to come for his family. They did not reach him that night, but the message was sent. Your money does not protect you. Your education does not protect you. To us, you are just targets. The riots of the 1830s and the 1840s changed the black elite. They did not lose their money, but they went underground. They became secretive. They stopped flashing their wealth in public. They retreated into private societies. This is when the secret society truly formed. They created exclusive clubs like the Banneker Institute and the Pythian Directory. These were not open to just anyone. You had to be nominated. You had to have money. You had to have good breeding. And yes, color played a role. The Old Philadelphians of color developed a reputation for being color-struck. They favored lighter-skinned members. They looked down on the formerly enslaved who were arriving from the South. They called them contrabands. It was a defense mechanism. They believed that if they maintained perfect manners, perfect dress, and perfect conduct, white society would eventually have to accept them. They were wrong, but they held on to this belief with a religious fervor. They refused to listen to jazz or blues. They listened to Bach and Beethoven. They did not eat soul food. They ate French cuisine. They were protecting a legacy that they felt was the only thing keeping them safe from the mob. There is another dark chapter to this story, the phenomenon of passing. Because many of these families were mixed race and light-skinned, they faced a tempting choice. They could leave Philadelphia. They could move to a new city where no one knew them. And they could become white. Historians estimate that thousands of wealthy black people from this era simply vanished from the records. They did not die. They crossed the color line. They married into white families. Their children grew up never knowing they had black ancestry. The Purvis family saw this tear them apart. Some nieces and nephews moved away and cut all ties. The wealth they had built as black entrepreneurs became white wealth in the next generation. This terrified the ones who stayed. They saw their community shrinking. Every time a son or daughter moved away to pass, the dynasty weakened. It was a slow, silent erasure. The families who remained, like the Mintons and the Warwicks, doubled down on their identity. They became even more insular. They clung to their history because they were the only ones left to remember it. By the 1900s, the world was changing again. The Old Philadelphians were facing a new threat, not white mobs, but a new kind of black wealth. The Great Migration brought thousands of black Southerners to Philadelphia. Some of them built fortunes in banking, insurance, and beauty products. There was Madam C.J. Walker and the bankers of Durham. This was new money. It was loud. It was proud. It did not care about French tutors or debutante balls. The Old Philadelphians turned their noses up at it. They refused to let these new millionaires into their social circles, and that was their fatal mistake. By closing their doors, the Old Philadelphians slowly strangled their own influence. They had the pedigree, but the new generation had the momentum. Slowly, the mansions on Lombard Street were sold. The catering empires were replaced by corporate hotels. The families drifted apart. Some moved to Europe. Some passed into white society, choosing to pass and leaving their history behind. Today, if you walk through Society Hill or the older parts of Philadelphia, you will not see statues of James Forten or Robert Purvis. Their mansions are mostly gone or converted into other things. The dynasty did not crash because of a scandal. It faded because it was designed to be secret. They built walls so high to keep the world out that eventually the world forgot they were there. But for 50 years, they proved something that terrified 19th century America. They proved that black excellence was not an anomaly. It was a civilization that thrived in the shadow of the Liberty Bell, building a definition of freedom that the Founding Fathers never intended. The Old Philadelphians are gone, but the foundation they built, the networks, the institutions, the very idea of black aristocracy survives in every black dynasty that followed. They were the first, and they paid the price of being first by being erased.